The movie opens with a glimpse of the city of Chicago in winter. Broadcasts fill the air with news of an unexpected surge of Christmas spirit. Focus shifts to a house charmingly decked with Christmas decorations. Inside, a busy mother, Sydney, prepares her son Oliver for school. Sydney meets one of the city's Christmas elves and is handed a free city bus pass. Not long after, she's approached by a new Christmas elf who offers another free bus pass. She continues along and stumbles upon a man dressed up as Santa and places a few dollars in the donation basket he was carrying. Finally, Sydney arrives at BCN News, her workplace. As Sydney walks alongside her boss Perry, they discuss her choice of story for the publications. Perry voices her disinterest, opting for a take on the Secret Santa story instead. Sydney tries to argue, but Perry cuts her short, reiterating that she only wants the story on the Secret Santa, along with his identity revealed, and that she wants BCN to be the first ones to publish it too. She lets her know that if she is unable to get the job done, she'll just get another to do it. Just then, a co-worker, Andy, walks in. He hands Perry some paperwork and assures her that he would, in fact, be the one to get her the story. Perry commends him, and he sends an unapologetic shrug Sydney's way and heads out. She catches up with him outside the office and asks about the groundwork he claims to have started. He reveals all he had to do regarding the story. Sydney gets home late at night to meet her mother reading to Oliver. She is glad she has made it back in time to tuck him in for bed. Her mom notices the sad look on her face and asks if she's all right. Sydney explains the situation at work. Her mother offers her comfort, encouraging her not to give up, and she brightens. The next day, Sydney heads out to work. Out her car window, she can see a crowd gathered as vans in a nearby parking lot distribute food. Sydney, sensing a story, gets out to investigate. Moments later, Sydney runs into Andy. Sydney pulls out her phone to take photos, but Andy informs her that he had already beaten her to it and had gotten his report to Perry for editing. Sydney is surprised, but takes comfort in knowing he is yet to break the case. From where she stands, Sydney notices a young man get into one of the parked vans. Suspicious he is the Secret Santa, she goes to confront him, but finds he's also a freelance journalist. As Sydney chats with him, he appears uneasy and in a hurry to leave. But a statement she made about being a single parent seems to catch his attention. He then offers to share his box of cake with her. Settled down, they continue their talk over the cake. She complains about how the holidays always have her so stressed. The man tries to make her see the bright side of Christmas. She stands up to get back to work, but suddenly realizes she hasn't asked his name. He tells her it's Cole Howard. Sydney also introduces herself before turning to leave. In the next scene, Cole is shown at his luxury home. He grabs an ornament, written Bliss, off his Christmas tree and shows it to his butler, Howard. He gladly announces to him that it is a product of their company's new collection, Silent Night. Cole brings up his encounter with Sydney earlier that day, but quickly mentions that he had been clever enough to give her a fake name and identity. He tells Howard that his Christmas acts are for people like her, people who are unable to see the true spirit of Christmas. Cole hopes to make her see the magic of the season. Sydney and her son return home from the hockey game. As they walk along their neighborhood, she notices the poinsettias. A neighbor soon walks past, and Sydney calls for her attention. She introduces herself and her son and asks the neighbor to know if she is aware of the person responsible for the flowers. She hands Sydney the Secret Santa call card she had found in her own potted flower, and Sydney thanks her as she walks away. Sydney spots Cole in the neighborhood and calls out to him. He heads towards her and Ollie, and she introduces the both of them. Sydney and Cole stand around and talk, and she voices her disappointment at not being able to catch the story in time. But as she looks around, she sees the effect this act has had on the neighborhood. Sydney begins to wonder if this could actually be more of the story, rather than the Secret Santa himself. Cole agrees with her, also noting that if the Secret Santa were to be revealed, all of such happenings would cease. She adds a little bit of her own Christmas magic to the story by calling out for hot chocolate, and the neighbors are delighted by her offer. They go about making the chocolate and talk about a number of things. Sydney starts up a conversation on the Secret Santa. Cole seems pushed to confess something to Sydney, but quickly changes his mind. With the chocolate ready, they head outside to distribute them to the neighbors. As they pass out the chocolate, Sydney gets into a conversation with the neighbor she had spoken to earlier that day. This neighbor, Beth, assumes Cole and Sydney to be married. Flustered, they both try to explain that they are not together. Sydney then takes the opportunity to ask if she had witnessed the flowers being set up. but Beth explains she had been out shopping. After Sydney wishes the neighbors a good night, he mentions his decision to let her have the story, but offers to be her partner. Sydney is surprised that any journalist would do this, but Cole gives his reasons, and with this, they agree to work together. The next day, Cole is at Howard, his business. He discusses with a lady he has just brought in about the launch of their new collection of ornamental Christmas decorations, Silent Night. Cole is proud to announce to her that he is allotting a percentage of the collection's sales to her charity organization. He explains his endearment towards organizations such as hers. The lady is overwhelmed and offers to make this public. Cole, however, expresses his preference to remain private. Howard now comes to join Cole. With the woman gone, they begin talking about his last Christmas act. Cole digresses and begins talking about Sydney. Howard hints that he just may be interested in her, but Cole denies having any feelings for her, explaining that his interest stems from wanting to help her. Sydney and Oliver are at home, decorating their Christmas tree. Her phone rings, and it's Cole calling. He lets her know he has a lead on the Secret Santa and asks her to meet him up at the community center. Sydney and Oliver arrive at the community center and find, much to their amazement, that it has been turned into a toboggan. Cole meets up with them and explains he got his tip from a friend who works at a snow plowing company. Sydney gets Cole to film her as she makes the report. After filming, Andy suddenly appears. This time, Sydney is proud to inform him that she and Cole had already covered the story. Andy now directs his attention towards Cole and comments on never having seen him before. Cole struggles for an answer and ends up telling him he is not from around. Andy now returns his attention to Sydney. He assures her that he will be the one to uncover the Secret Santa and get the position at BCN. After a moment of laughter, the three take a walk through the city park. Cole gets them hot chocolates, while Sydney is on the phone with Perry. They join in on a crowd gathered round a street musician singing Christmas carols. This makes Sydney ask Cole if he had any Christmas traditions. Cole recounts his favorite, where he and his mom would pick a plain Christmas ornament and decorate it. His mom would always write the same word every year, bliss, saying it encapsulated everything Christmas meant to her. Later that evening, Sydney has her mom come around so they can watch her news report. Her mom points out that it's just the kind of news people ought to be hearing this season. Sydney agrees. Oliver sits beside the two, making a Christmas ornament for Cole, and Sydney is surprised, yet heartwarmed. Sydney's mom picks up the talk about Cole. Sydney warns her not to get too excited, explaining they are just work partners. Sydney's mom asks if she is just afraid to start something new. Sydney counters, insisting that she just has to be certain before bringing anyone new into their lives. The next day, Sydney makes her way to Perry's office to ask about the ratings on her last report. Sydney then suggests that next time, they lead with the Secret Santa story for better ratings. Perry doesn't seem too convinced though. Sydney tries to convince her that she would be the best for the position at BCN, and if given the chance, she would make sure to do anything to get the story. Sydney has her full attention. Giving her a full gaze, Perry asks if she would always be able to get her the story she wants, even if that story required a hardened journalist. Sydney struggles to give her an answer. Sydney admits that she actually only loves the stories with heart and a message. Perry is plain, informing her that those kinds of stories do not give good ratings. Sydney insists that the Secret Santa story will be different. Perry finally surrenders. She tells Sydney to continue with her Secret Santa stories. She's happy. Later that day, Sydney gets a call from Cole. He then asks for them to meet up at her place in about an hour, and Sydney agrees, since Oliver will be dropped off at home after hockey. He arrives at Sydney's place, and she is surprised to see the boxes. He tells her it is for them to hang her outdoor Christmas lights, reminding her that she had earlier complained about being too busy to do it herself. Soon enough, they are done with the lights, and in no distant time, Oliver is back from hockey. Sydney invites Cole in for dinner, and in a hurry, he starts off to leave, explaining that he had some work to do. Before he leaves, though, he invites her for a treat the next day. Sydney and Cole meet up as agreed at Highland Park, where they grab a meal. As they chat and eat, she notices a tiny speaker set up in the decorations above. She dismisses the speakers, though, assuming them to be the remainder of a city event. They begin brainstorming on what the Secret Santa could possibly have planned next. She suspects his next act must be related to music, highlighting Jingle Bells as the Christmas theme. She makes reference to the speakers she had noticed earlier, suspecting they may play a part in this next act. She quickly puts across a phone call. After asking a few questions, she finds that the speakers do not belong to the city. All the while, Cole is amazed at her prowess, and Sydney, growing confident about her hunch, asks that they go in search of more speakers. They find many more of these speakers, and also a secret Santa call card. Cole and Sydney are out till dark. They enjoy each other's company. Soon, they start talking about the secret Santa and his aim. Sydney dubs this a great task, as the average citizen is too busy to look around and notice. She admits that she is as guilty of this as anyone, but Cole stresses that it's really just about showing a little bit of kindness. They share a moment before the blasts of music interrupt them. They rush to the scene of the music, where a crowd has already begun gathering. Sydney's favorite, Deck the Halls, soon starts off playing, and Cole gets everyone to sing along. Before they head back, he records her as she makes her report. Along the way, they stop to sit and begin talking. Sydney, however, is concerned about Cole. She is bothered that he does not have anything to gain out of all this, and even offers to share the credit with him. He turns down her offer, urging her to accept his help as just a random act of Christmas kindness. Sydney gets an idea, and she grabs Cole as they head out to perform their own act of Christmas kindness, placing candy canes on the windscreens of parked cars. Sydney gets back home and tells her mom that the carol sound she heard earlier was all Cole's idea. Cole has gotten home to Howard, and they discuss the success of the day's act. He thanks him for his part in playing the music, and states that Sydney may hopefully even land the position. Sydney is at work the following day, where she runs into Andy. He congratulates her on her top story, but warns her not to celebrate too much, as he is soon to break the story on the secret Santa. Sydney is amazed that he is still trying to expose him. She reminds him of the interviews, notifying him that the popular opinion is for the secret Santa to remain anonymous, so as not to ruin the holidays. Andy, however, cannot comprehend how his story could possibly ruin anything. Sydney is baffled and asks if he even has any Christmas spirit. He tells her he does, but that it comes only in the form of a gingerbread or ginger cookie. Perry walks in on their conversation and asks to know what's going on. Andy reveals that he has a lead on the secret Santa. Once again, Sydney argues that no one wants his reveal, as it would ruin Christmas. Surprisingly, Perry agrees. Andy is shocked, but determined to publish his story. He informs them both that he will be taking his story to another network, and he storms off. Sydney is returning from picking up Oliver from school. As they walk along, Oliver spots Cole, with both Howard and his car, a little while off, and yells out to him. Cole turns as they walk up to him. Oliver, impressed by the luxury car, asks if it's his, and Cole stutters to come up with an answer. Fortunately, Howard comes to his rescue, pretending to be the driver for a made-up personality Cole was going to interview. Before she leaves, she lets him know about the bust soon to be made on the secret Santa, and tells him that they would discuss later. Oliver chimes in, inviting Cole over for dinner, stating that he could also help with the cookies and the Christmas decorations. Sydney tries telling him not to bother, but Cole is all in for Oliver's idea, and even offers to bring decorations for the tree. They leave, and he gets in the car. Safely inside, Cole voices his concern on what Sydney has just told him, and decides to lay low for a while. While at their home, Cole tries to get some more information on the secret Santa reveal. Sydney, unfortunately, has nothing new on it. Sydney's mom brings over a cool tray of cookies to the table, and calls Oliver over to decorate. Everyone joins in on the decorating, and Sydney's mom, seeing they have got it all covered, decides to take her leave. Cole hands her a present before she goes, and they all wish her goodbye. The three of them continue with decorating. In passing, Cole recounts how he and his mom would go to the petting zoo during the holidays to feed the animals. Oliver makes a request to also do that, and Sydney and Cole both agree. They schedule it for the next day. After Ollie's school Christmas party, it's time for Oliver to go to bed. But before he does that, he hands Cole a handcrafted house, gives him a hug, and wishes him a good night. All the while, Cole looks over at Sydney in surprise, charmed by her son's actions. Later, he remarks how great a kid Oliver is, and Sydney agrees. Sydney thanks Cole for everything. He smiles, and she fixes her gaze on her. Panicked, Cole straightens to leave, explaining that he has to go get the seeds for the petting zoo tomorrow. Startled and slightly confused, Sydney walks him to the door. The next morning, Sydney and her mom talk on the phone. Her mom mentions how great she thinks Cole is, and how undeniably in love he is with her. Sydney isn't so convinced, and she tells her mom how hurriedly he had left the night before. Her mom offers her assurance, explaining that he may have felt uncomfortable with Oliver around. Sydney shrugs it off and brings the conversation to a close, as she has to get Oliver to school. Cole is seen on phone, requesting for a skyflyer. Howard waits for him to settle, before asking to know how he plans on breaking the truth to Sydney. Cole admits he is unsure. Howard then suggests he take her to a place they have both been, and then tell her there. Cole agrees. Cole, Sydney, and Oliver are at the petting zoo. A conversation starts up between Cole and Sydney, and this leads to her opening up about her struggles. She admits having always borne her family burdens alone, because she had always feared disappointment from a partner. Cole listens, and afterwards, he asks if they could meet at Highland Park tomorrow, but just the two of them. Sydney happily consents, but wants to know why. Cole starts to explain, but just then, a lady walks in, calling him by his actual name, Colin. He panics and quickly pulls the lady aside. A confused and curious Sydney watches on. The woman, Diane, asks if Cole will be at the black and white cherry ball again this year. He affirms briefly and assures her they can catch up later again at the ball. She now leaves, and Cole gets back over to Sydney. He begins explaining himself, telling her that he met Diane last year at the ball, where he was covering a story. He also explains that she must have mixed up his name, calling him Colin instead of Cole. Sydney takes his word for it, nodding in understanding. Sydney and Oliver are back home, and as they watch the news, a special pops up. WQP have scheduled a live interview with the Secret Santa for the following evening. Oliver is in shock. He asks his mom if this means an end to the Secret Santa acts, but she cannot offer him any assurance. She only hopes that it doesn't, and the boy looks pained. Sydney meets up with Cole at Highland Park, as discussed. She admits that she has a gut feeling that something about the Secret Santa interview isn't right. Cole then tries to tell her what he's planned, when her phone begins ringing. She apologizes, taking the call. She then lets him know she has to leave, stating that her hockey carpool had just bailed. She asks what he had been saying before, but he tells her not to bother, assuring her that he will tell her later. Cole and Howard have heard that WPQ is about to break the news, and this has them racing towards his private helicopter, parked on the roof at Howard. Cole gets in, and Howard shuts the door behind him as it takes off. That evening, as Sydney and her son walk through the park, they witness firsthand another of the Secret Santa acts. He rains tiny gift boxes with parachutes on the people. The crowd is joyful and full of laughter as they pick up and open the little boxes. Sydney gets the quick thinking to do a report, and Oliver is her cameraman for the day. They get home, and Sydney is on the phone with Cole. She tells him all about the Secret Santa act, and on the other end, he dons a smile of victory. She adds that Andy's Secret Santa was just a bluff. She is excited that the real Secret Santa is still out there, and also hopes to get good ratings on her report. Along the course of their conversation, he is reminded that she still believes him to be a journalist. This prompts him to invite her out for dinner, scheduled the next day, so he can finally tell her the truth. Sydney is elated, and the smile on her face tells of renewed hope. The following morning, Sydney stands nervously before Perry as she gives her the ratings for her report. Fortunately, they are so good that they blew away Andy's story. Sydney is overjoyed, and it turns out Andy's Secret Santa was just an attention seeker. Perry even thanks Sydney for her advice, and not supporting that they anchor the story. To Sydney's surprise, she also congratulates her, announcing to her that the much-desired position is finally hers. Sydney is overwhelmed, and with much joy she thanks Perry, promising not to disappoint her. As she heads down the stairs to leave the office, she is followed by Andy. He congratulates her on her big story that was able to top his. She attributes her success, however, to the real Secret Santa, and Andy jumps on this. He accuses her of knowing the Secret Santa, and Sydney denies this, stating that her journalistic intuition had always been effective. She points out that he had failed to use his when he covered a story on a fake. Andy ignores this, warning her of the dangers of compromising her integrity by pretending to break a story. Sydney once again makes it clear that she does not know who the Secret Santa is, but that even if she did, she still wouldn't reveal him. With this same joy, she shouts a Merry Christmas to everyone at the office. Cole, at his office, has just received some mail. He opens it to see it's the skyflyer he had ordered. He holds the box, looking accomplished, as he puts a call across, making a reservation for 2 at a restaurant. Sydney, now at home, struggles to find what to wear to dinner that night. Oliver picks a red dress for her. stating that it aligns more with the season. She settles her gaze on the Christmas tree beside her. She remarks on how this tree is the best yet, and then her gaze settles on one of the ornaments. It has the word bliss on it, and she is intrigued. She asks her son if it's one of the ornaments that Cole brought over, and his answer is yes. Remembering he had told her that was his mother's favorite Christmas word, she goes on to check the box it came in. It reads, Hauer Silent Night Collection. Quickly, she pulls out her laptop and looks up Hauer. Clicking on one of the web pages, she reads through the information. Next, she reaches her mom, asking her to come over much earlier. She explains that she has something she wants to check first. Before the dinner, Sydney makes her way over to Hauer. Walking up to the front desk, she asks to know if there is a Cole Howard that works there. The receptionist's reply is no. She turns to leave, but then gets a bright idea. Grabbing a nearby Christmas wreath, she heads inside the creative department. Meanwhile, Cole is shown on the floor above, making a phone call. Sydney holds the wreath before her, trying to blend in. And as she walks around, marveled at the beauty she sees. Turning to look around, she sets her eyes on Cole and is shocked. He stands on the floor above, still on the call. Turning to face in her direction, he doesn't notice her, and quickly, she uses the wreath to shield herself as she scurries into hiding. After dropping the call, Cole descends the steps and walks past her out the door, but does not notice she is there. She follows him outside, watching him as he gets into the car with Howard. She realizes that she is being lied to, and quickly gets into her car to follow them. Sydney follows them all the way to their home, but parks a while off to continue on foot. Howard helps Cole get ready for the dinner, and Cole is anxious. He is worried Sydney will not take the news well. Howard tries to calm him, telling him to convince her that nothing has changed. He then asks Cole if he has Oliver's present with him. The doorbell rings. He opens the door to find Sydney. Without being asked, she makes her way in. Looking around the house she takes in its grandeur, she starts her rant, asking for an explanation on how a struggling freelance journalist could afford such a place. He tries calming her down, assuring her that he had planned to tell her everything at the dinner. This does not soothe her, and she reveals that she has already found out the truth. She tells him that he is actually Colin Hauer, the owner of Hauer Enterprises. Sydney is so upset to have been lied to all this time, and Cole tries to explain that he did it to help her. She demands he explain further, and this leads him to reveal he is also the Secret Santa. Finding out that he is the Secret Santa makes her even more upset, making her feel like an incompetent journalist, unable to see the truth right under her nose. He tries refuting this, letting her know that she is a great journalist, but she doesn't believe it. Even more terrible is the pain she feels from believing that his feelings for her were also fake. He assures her that they are real, but Sydney, unable to comprehend this, storms out and heads straight for her car. He tries to stop her from leaving, but she pulls herself from his grip and drives off. Unknown to both of them, Andy watches the whole scene from a safe distance, seated in an obscured car. With a distraught Cole left alone in the driveway, he takes photos. With sunken shoulders, Cole returns inside, and Howard tries to comfort him, advising him to give her more time. He then begins questioning both himself and his secret acts, wondering if they were really worth it, as he makes his way up the steps to his room. Sydney arrives back home with sadness written all over her face, which she tries to hide. Her early arrival is much to Oliver's surprise. His grandmother, however, sends him up for bed, and he obeys. With Oliver upstairs, Sydney's mom goes to her and tries to find out what had happened. Sydney's reply is vague, simply stating that Cole hadn't turned out to be the man he thought. Sydney goes to work the next day and heads to deliver the news to Perry firsthand, but she discovers that Andy has done that already. Perry's only concern is that he now has the right info and would release it, bringing an end to all of their Christmas stories. Sydney isn't convinced though, as she believes the Secret Santa has already completed his mission. With the holiday spirit he has spread, she believes the big story is yet to come. That same morning, as Andy makes his way through the streets of Chicago, he is bombarded at every turn with random acts of Christmas kindness. It starts with a free hot chocolate, and then people wishing him a Merry Christmas. And next, a man even places a Christmas wreath round his neck. Finally, a lady hands him a gingerbread man. Finally, he arrives at the set for his report, and they start shooting. He takes them twice, but has both canceled. Before the start of the third take, he takes a bite out his gingerbread, and with a caroling in the background, he seems to be getting caught in the Christmas spirit. Meanwhile, Sydney is at one of the city's charity drop-off points. She reports the massive turn-up for donations, as everyone has taken up the challenge to carry out their own acts of Christmas kindness. Cole smiles as he watches her from home. She highlights that the Secret Santa has caused a wave, and that a new movement has begun, with everyone carrying out random acts of Christmas kindness. And that, she tells them, is the big story. Perry calls Sydney as soon as she is done reporting. She is happy to tell her that she has been able to land the biggest story of the year, and even adds that Andy ended up not breaking his story, going for a weather report instead. This is a surprise to both of them, and Sydney wonders if he may also have caught the Christmas spirit being spread. Perry believes this may be true. She congratulates her once again, wishing her a Merry Christmas, and Sydney returns the greeting. Sydney arrives at her front porch after a day's work, and Howard calls out to her, making her stop and turn. He explains that he works for Cole and hands her a gift that he believes he would have wanted her to have. He begins to tell her that he has known Cole for many years, and that he would never purposely deceive her, or anyone, with bad intentions. He adds that his only intent was to spread a little bit of Christmas joy while helping her. Cole is at home, and he walks into the dining room to find Sydney. He is surprised by her appearance. He tries to offer her a drink, but she declines, telling him that she only came to thank him. First for Ollie's gift, which really touched her heart, and then for making this Christmas one of the best. Taking a step closer, she also tells him that she now understands why he did what he did to help her. And so, she thanks him for that too, and he smiles. He tells her that she doesn't have to thank him because he enjoyed every minute he spent with the both of them. He tells her that his only intent was to spread a little bit of Christmas joy, and that he didn't expect any of this, but then he trails off. Sydney asks him to complete the statement. He tells her that he didn't expect to fall in love with her. Lowering his head, he begins to apologize, but then Sydney swoops in to kiss him. She tells him that she hadn't expected any of this either, and they kiss again as the scene fades out. It is the long-awaited Christmas, and both families are gathered round as Oliver unwraps his present. He finds it is a sky flyer, and he is happy and surprised. She tells him, though, that it was not without help from the Secret Santa. Lauren, Sydney's mom, on hearing the timer, heads over to the kitchen to check on her bread pudding, and Howard follows her, offering his assistance. He asks to try one of her pancakes. Done with setting the table, Lauren and Howard head back to join the rest, and Howard then raises a toast. First to Cole, now called Colin, then to Sydney, and finally to her mom Lauren. Oliver suggests to Colin that they be his secret elves next year, and he tells him that is a great idea. On this note, he notifies them, much to Sydney's surprise, that he has one more Secret Santa act up his sleeve. Sydney and Oliver follow him outside, while Howard chooses to remain inside with Lauren. Colin points to the sky and has them look up, where the words Merry Christmas are being spelt out in big red puffs of smoke. The spectacle attracts a crowd, and they all watch in excitement, marveled by it. Sydney is happy with the surprise, and she leans in for a kiss as they both wish each other a Merry Christmas.